All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a seriously epic historical power struggle. I'm talking about a massive clash of empires packed with betrayal, brutal economic warfare, sheer terror, and honestly, one of the most stunning reversals of fortune you'll find anywhere in ancient history. We're exploring how the tiny kingdom of Judah faced down the seemingly unstoppable world-dominating Assyrian Empire. It's totally a David and Goliath story, but played out on this massive geopolitical stage where the survival of an entire nation is literally hanging in the balance.
Okay, so to really grasp this conflict, we've got to look at the massive geopolitical betrayal that kicked the whole thing off. If you look at Isaiah chapter 33, verse 1, it actually addresses Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, directly, calling out his treachery. Because, get this, he was a conqueror who struck a deal with Judah. He took an enormous tribute from them in exchange for leaving them alone, and then he broke the agreement anyway. He took all their wealth and still marched his massive armies right up to their doorstep to spoil them.
Let's walk through the timeline real quick to put this into perspective. Starting around 740 BC, the Assyrian Empire was aggressively expanding, swallowing up neighboring nations left and right. Fast forward to 701 BC, which is the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, and Sennacherib invades Judah. Hezekiah actually submits and pays a massive indemnity. We're talking a huge tribute just to cover the costs of the war and keep Jerusalem safe. But Assyria totally used this as a form of economic warfare. After crippling Judah financially, Sennacherib broke the covenant. He despised the Judean cities and brought his mighty military machine right to the gates of Jerusalem, using the suffocating siege as a literal rod of judgment to threaten the absolute heart of the kingdom.
So that brings us to our first main point, the betrayal and the terrifying reality of the siege itself. That broken promise totally shifts our focus from international diplomacy to the sheer panic gripping the capital. The despair in Jerusalem was absolute. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 7 states that the valiant ones shall cry without, and the ambassadors of peace shall weep bitterly. These envoys, the guys sent by King Hezekiah to negotiate, they're weeping bitterly because of Sennacherib's harsh, unyielding demands. There's no more negotiation happening here. The Assyrians are demanding the total, unconditional surrender of Jerusalem.
And outside the city walls, the landscape entirely reflected this terror. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 8 states that the highways lie waste. The ancient roads are now completely empty of travelers because the Assyrians have shown absolutely no mercy to anyone. Nobody even dared to travel, so the trade routes were effectively dead. Sennacherib had already devastated the surrounding Judean cities, showing a complete, ruthless disregard for human life.
What's really interesting about this is how highly calculated the sheer scale of the devastation was. According to Isaiah chapter 33, verse 9, regions like Lebanon, Sharon, Carmel, and Bashan, which were formerly the absolute most lush, beautiful, and fruitful regions of the Holy Land, were stripped completely bare. They were left as a withered wilderness. You see, this wasn't just mindless destruction. No, this was Sennacherib's deliberate economic strategy of starving the land to completely break Judah's ability to resist.
Now we move into the dramatic climax of the conflict, the divine intervention.
Picture this, the land is starved, the treasury is totally emptied, and there's a ruthless, unstoppable army right outside the gates. All human hope is pretty much gone. Staring down total annihilation, the people issue this desperate mourning plea for survival. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 2 states this perfectly. It's a prayer for grace, looking for a strong arm of deliverance every single morning just to endure the unrelenting terror of the siege. And right here, the narrative hits its ultimate turning point. The Assyrians, totally glutted with their conquests and dealing treacherously at every turn, have finally gone way too far. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 10 states that the Lord will now rise, be exalted, and lift himself up. After Assyria crossed the line, God takes definitive action, stepping in to show his absolute power, not just to the Assyrian army, but to all the surrounding nations.
The result of that intervention? Total, absolute tumult. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 3 states this brilliantly. The massive, terrifying Assyrian army, which, remember, was made up of all these various conquered nations, scatters in absolute panic at the deafening noise and chaos of this divine judgment. So rather than pressing the attack on Jerusalem, this mighty host suddenly breaks and flees, literally running for their lives into the dead of night.
Let's shift our focus now to the survivors inside the city walls, the righteous remnant.
While the Assyrian army is scattering in pure chaos outside the walls, the spiritual state of the people inside comes into sharp focus. This sudden deliverance brings a really terrifying realization for the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 14 states that the sinners and hypocrites in Zion are suddenly struck with terror. They realize that, hey, if God can destroy a massive army like that overnight just outside their walls, they too are going to have to face His righteous judgment inside the walls.
So it begs the question, how do you survive in the presence of that kind of power? Well, Isaiah chapter 33, verse 15 lays out the absolute requirements to dwell safely on high. Basically, a person must reject corruption entirely. You have to walk righteously, speak uprightly, despise the gain of oppression, refuse bribes, and completely shut your ears and eyes to violence and evil. Fulfilling these requirements guarantees ultimate protection and ensures that even in a crazy crisis, your water and bread will be totally secure.
And that leads us to the final and honestly most mind-blowing act, the economic reversal, or the great spoil. Just imagine waking up and realizing the nightmare is suddenly, miraculously over. Isaiah chapter 33 verses 17 and 18 state that King Hezekiah is no longer mourning in sackcloth and ashes. Instead, the people see him publicly in his royal robes, in all his beauty. The citizens reflect on the sheer terror they literally just escaped, and they realize something crazy. The Assyrian scribe, the muster master, and the treasurer who ruthlessly demanded their tribute, they're just completely gone.
So the crucial point here is this massive economic flip. An expected Assyrian victory meant total starvation, the enslavement of the Judeans, and having Jerusalem's remaining wealth entirely stripped away. But the actual historical outcome? It saw the massive Assyrian camp completely abandoned in a blind panic. This resulted in an immense, shocking transfer of wealth and resources right back into the hands of Judah.
Isaiah chapter 33, verse 23 uses such a brilliant metaphor to describe the aftermath. The once mighty, seemingly unstoppable Assyrian war machine is described as a wrecked ship stuck right in the moat around Jerusalem. It is completely immobilized. Its mast is broken, its tacklings are loosed, and it is totally unable to escape. It's dead in the water. And, what happens to a wrecked ship? It gets plundered. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 4, states that the spoil shall be gathered like caterpillars or locusts. The Judeans, who were literally starving just hours before, eagerly rush out of the city gates. They swarm this massive, abandoned Assyrian tent city like locusts, urgently gathering up all the immense treasures, weapons, and supplies that the fleeing army just left behind.
Which brings us to the ultimate, beautiful irony of this whole event. Isaiah chapter 33, verses 23 and 24 state that because the Lord fought the battle, it wasn't just valiant, strong warriors taking the spoils. Nope, even the sick, the weak, and the lame of Jerusalem were able to walk right out of those gates and seize the immense wealth of their oppressors. Their physical weakness didn't even matter, and wonderfully, the text notes their iniquities were forgiven.
It is an absolutely fascinating slice of history, right? It completely redefines how a seemingly inevitable defeat can just flip into a total victory. So I want to leave you with this final thought. When facing an overwhelming power struggle, how does this sudden reversal from total economic devastation to immense abundance challenge our understanding of deliverance? It really makes you think. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep exploring.